Welcome to History at High Noon today. I'm so glad to have all of you. We've got a great speaker and some information for you. First of all, if you have not joined the Coffee Type, Lord have mercy. Don't take me back there. Coffee County Historical Society, we have forms, and if you folks at home will text 912-381-1135, I'll send you one. All of our programs, all of our projects are all handled by money raised by dues and donations. The city keeps up the building, but we could keep up everything else. So if you'd like to join, we have forms, and you folks at home, just let me know, and I will get you a form, I promise. Second of all, Mr. Jim Cottingham, don't come up and make a statement, or two, or three.
Okay. Thank you, Carol, and thanks for that pitch for the Coffee Historical Society. Yes. Folks are doing wonderful work. I asked Carol for a moment of your time since we've got such a wonderful crowd here for this exemplary occasion, wonderful speaker. I've distributed a little website that I'd like to call your attention to. It's from the Coffee County Memories Project 50 years ago, Overcoming Segregation. Looking around the group, I see about 8 people who were interviewed for this project. It's a virtual tour, and please visit the website and tell us what you think.
Thank you. We may not want to know, Jim. Cat does. Okay. Today we have a wonderful guest speaker. I've been trying to get him here for over a year, and he finally made it. Welcome, Mr. Curtis Farrell.
Well, thank you, Annie. It made me sort of limit this discussion. I can't talk about a lot of things. But,
Thanks, Annie.
but I would just sort of give you a show. I went to Coffee High School, then went to Georgia Southern, graduated from Mercer Law School, came back here in '69, and so that's it. I'm through.
Good program.
I was on the first football team that played on Jardine Stadium. At Jardine Stadium, so that's been 62 years ago. Wow. But thank you, Carol, for inviting me. And I just want to introduce some folks. Of course, Annie is right there sitting by Sid Cunningham, and she saved my life in the last 10 years a bunch of times. So I appreciate her coming. And we got Kurt back there, my son. He runs the law practice now, along with Drew Tanner and Matt Hennessy. And Matt's father, Joey, practiced law with me for over a quarter of a century. He's a great lawyer, and he was a good partner. And by the way, that law office is behind the Methodist Church on Madison Avenue. It's the 50th anniversary this year. I don't even know if you knew that, Kurt. This is 50 years that me and Daddy moved in there, so that's sort of a fun thing a long time ago, I can tell you that. We got Jerry Rozier, and I'm on, and Julie Harper. I don't know if Julie's here or not, but yeah, Julie worked for Joey, and Joey's not there anymore. Julie still works at a practice, and she's working with Matt. So I'm not going to discuss how long these people have worked for us. There's no reason doing that, but I want to tell you about somebody else that's here, is Barbara. It's sort of hard to talk about Barbara. Daddy hired Barbara. And she worked for me for my whole career. And then she worked with Kurt. Wow. So I mean, we didn't know she didn't work for me. I worked with her, and we all sort of worked together. And that's the way that practice was. Everybody can tell you that. We all sort of work together down there, and we don't work for anybody. We just sort of enjoy ourselves. We've been together. We know everything about everybody. Well, we could try to talk over that. But let me tell you about, I wanted to tell you all about Barbara, her daughter, and all the girls, all the ladies I've just mentioned. They have done something in Coffee County that's better than anything been done in Coffee County for 100 years. They've started this childhood, not started, it's ongoing, been ongoing forever, childhood cancer awareness. And can you imagine waking up one morning and telling your child has cancer, or your grandmother or mother? Well, this is what Barbara, that organization, they not only have ways to help you and help you, point you in the right direction, they got money to help you with, which you desperately need. And not only do they just work in Coffee County, they do all the surrounding counties. So it's a fabulous organization. And that's the next speaker. Who's, Carol, where you at? Barbara would be, that organization is just a fabulous thing for Coffee County. I think it's the best thing that's ever been done here in the last 100 years. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful thing for this community and for a lot of families. And my father came back here after World War II in 1948, and he went to Mercer Law School, graduated, and then him and mother taught it. There was, you know, where we vote up there, there used to be schools up there. Him and mother taught it for daddy was practicing law, but at night mother and him would be educating returning veterans. And daddy married Mamie Lindsay, and she was from Willie Coochie. And Roy's there. Roy's daddy and my mother, brothers and sisters. So that sort of brings everything together. They both graduated from, I reckon, Willie Coochie High, and if there was such a thing. But anyway, that's a lot of history here, and I came back and had the opportunity of practicing with my father, who really showed me a lot of things in the beginning. And by God, at the beginning, you better know a lot of things, because these old lawyers would teach you a lot of things. I thought I knew something. I tell you.
Hard way.
They hard way. And Dewey's daddy was a solicitor when I came back, and he'd been the solicitor for about 25 years then. And he could teach you a lot of things when you try a case in criminal court, superior court. I'll tell you a few things the way it was in 1969. And you're probably not going to believe some of these. When all the lawyers, when they came to work, they had suits on. They didn't have, we come up there, look at Kurt. He's got a pair of shorts on. He's got shorts on. Okay, lawyers had suits on, not a pair of pants and a dress coat. They had a suit. Nice tie, nice shirt. And when they went to their office, that's the way they were dressed. When to court, the way they were dressed. And when they checked the title, that's the way they were dressed. And it was hot as the devil in that room checking titles. And they would take the coat off every now and then, but they hated to, because they were dressed. And also, all the offices were closed at Wednesday afternoon at lunch. Jerome, you remember that? Yeah. And then they opened up Saturday morning to lunch. And they followed the banks. That's the way the banks did it. The banks did it that way because they wanted to be cordial with the farmers, wanted to accommodate the farmers and opening on Saturday morning. But that's the way I started practicing law, and that's the way it was. But I mean, you go in any law office now, people got on shorts, they got on blue jeans, but that wasn't the way it was then. I never saw my daddy go in that law office without a suit on, period. And, that's just the way the world was. And the other thing in the courthouse, and I reckon anywhere, but particularly in the courthouse, I really remember this. You'd walk in and you'd be trying a case and everybody smoked. Jury be smoking, judge would be smoking, witness would be smoking, lawyer would be smoking. And so what you did is you may stop and walk up and give your witness a light, And this is, and they'd also be chewing, spitting. And so in the jury, when the jury was sitting up there, they had spittoons. And they go, and that was very common knowledge. And I remember some of the county commissioners saying, we're not going to change that. There's a lot of tobacco farmers around here, and that's just the way it's going to be. Yeah. So, and it made that to good Lord, we were one of the last counties to change that rule. But I've got a sinus infection, so. But anyway, that was a fun way to start. People would be smoking right up to the, right up to the end. You'd have to accommodate the smoking, the judge smoking, everybody smoking. And we had two, well, the court's essentially the same now as they were then. You had two courts. you had a state court and a superior court. The superior court handled civilly, they handled divorces, and they handled landline cases, they handled different cases of that nature. State court handled civil cases, and they also handled minor criminal cases. And it's very similar to the way it is now, or exactly the same way. And I think, didn't we get I think we got a new state court judge yesterday, and I think it's a female for the first time. Isn't that right, Jerome? So, Kathy Paul, is that Katie Paul. That's why I need these notes. Katie Paul, the first female state court judge. And when I started, Jerome Adams worked with Judge Holton, who was a state court judge then, and he was excellent, very, very smart. Jean would tell you, he's a brilliant guy. He knew the law. He was an excellent state court judge. And the superior court judge was Judge Hodges. Now, the way it is now, they had 6 counties. And Judge Hodges was the only judge in the 6 counties, and they rode the circuit. He'd be in Coffee County for a month, and then he'd go to Waycross, he'd go here, there, and other counties, and you wouldn't see him. But I mean, if you want to get somebody to get a divorce, and they had to have their divorce, you had to call the judge up and find out what county he was in. But it's a different world. Now, state court, they held all their court right here in Douglas, and it was any kind of civil case, and it was all every month. Of course, in those days, as you can imagine, the equipment was a lot different. They didn't have all the videos and technology we have today, but it was just an old-timey way of dictating to your secretary. And usually you just had one secretary. And I can remember the pleadings back there. This is a trial by ambush, and I reckon, Dewey, I don't even know if you remember that. I know Jerome does. But in the 1969, it changed in the 70s. I don't even know if you know this, Sid. In 69, when you pled a case, the pleadings were 25, 30, 40 pages long. I mean, you had to state everything about your case in your pleadings. And the answers were the same way. I mean, you had to tell the names, what happened. It was a landline case. The pleading would be awful if it was divorce, because they'd go into all the stuff, you know. And the defense would go into all the stuff, and that's the way it was. Of course, there was no depositions, there was no interrogatories, no discovery. So you had to plead, you had to put everything in your defense, in your pleadings and everything in your answers. So it was just a whole different world. And the lawyers, you had to be real careful in your pleading, because the judge would throw it out if you didn't have every bit of information in it. And you wouldn't learn any witnesses. You didn't know who the witnesses were. And these older lawyers damn sure wouldn't tell you. I can tell you that. They'd keep everything secret. And you may wonder how we made any money. I want to go about that. You check titles. Of course, people still buying land then. They were still buying houses. And you go to the courthouse, and each individual lawyer checked their own titles. Now they have services. These lawyers that do a lot of land closing, they have somebody that checks their titles. I reckon, Sid, don't y'all have that? Or you go check your own title? Okay. But the lawyers wouldn't check the titles up there at the courthouse, and like I told you, they went up there in their suit, and they may take the coat off. In wintertime, they'd leave the suit on. But they checked their own titles, and that's one of the ways they made money. The other way is divorces. There were very, very few divorces back in 69, 70, and it was very difficult to get anybody to pay you. But I'll tell you a little funny story. Daddy's office is right across the street from the courthouse, and an uncontested divorce would be like $125, maybe. But $25 of that went to filing fee to the clerk's office. So somebody, I remember this has happened to me, so I can remember it very clearly. Somebody came in, they wanted to know what the fee was, went over the divorce, you spent an hour or so talking to him, realized it was uncontested. Well, I'll charge you $125. And $25 was clerk, so you make $100 out of it. Well, they said, Mr. Fair, we'll be back in a while. So what they did is they walked around the corner. They go down to Ashton, turn left on Ashton, go to Madison, turn left, Ward, and come back to the office. That may take a day, it may take half a day. And they get back to the office and they say, well, we talked to this so-and-so, and he thinks he can do it for $75. Well, you start figuring, well, that's a $50 fee. And if it got down to, and this has got down to $50, so-and-so said they could do it for $50. Well, you didn't make it for $25. And that's filing your petition, getting your people in, meeting with them, and then going to court, getting a divorce. So I mean, of course, money was hard to go by those days and to come by. And sometime you did those things, and I mean, you may handle one for $50. You couldn't handle it for $25 because you wouldn't make nothing. The other way, and nobody in this room is going to believe what I'm fixing to tell you, but in state court, the first Monday in every month, the state court judges, state court judge would have all the lawyers in the county come meet at the courthouse at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, first Monday. And what you did your clients would be out in the jury room, in the courthouse, and you had to, if a client had hired you, you stood up and where you pled guilty or wanted continuance or whatever. And the other thing, the court would appoint a case. And if you were out there and the court would appoint you to represent so-and-so who didn't have a lawyer, then that was a big thing. Listen, if I got appointed to a case and I'm just started practicing and I could try that case, I can make $75. Now y'all think I'm crazy, but that is true. If you had to plead the case, or you did plead the case, guy pled guilty, got his fine, went on, it was $10 or $15. But that's the way it was in state court, and it was first Monday in every month. And most every lawyer in this county would be there. Not most, every lawyer. I remember I looked around when I first started, and I looked around. I said, "What the hell is all these lawyers doing here?" And they wanted. Some of them, of course, represented people, but they wanted appointed cases. They wanted to make that $75, and they got appointed. Another way this is going to be a little repeat is just litigation, just fighting the case out. And again, the pleadings, as I told you, may be 25, 30, 40 pages long. Your answer would be the same way. And there was no discovery. And I'm going to go in a little bit what discovery is. And you didn't know any about the witnesses. You didn't know what evidence they had. And you had to be dang careful with these older lawyers because you get to trying a case, well, they may, according to that jury, you go strike a jury, their first witness may be the jury, forming the jury's brother. And so you're in damn trouble and you know it. And you don't think that will happen, that will happen. And you had to be, they could work over their witness list based on who was on the jury. That's how they got they could change, add a few witnesses if it was helped them on that jury. And they did. And so all I'm trying to tell you is when I began practicing law, you would learn a lot of things. And I think Jerome would sort of support me in that. And they could teach you a lot of things. They're a hell of a lot more than Mercer Law School did. And like I say, some of the litigation we had was back early on in the mid-70s, and would be landline cases. And our amount of anything involving land, the amount of acreage, the amount of where the land lines were, and the way the deeds were in the 1920s and 30s, and even before that, they would say all that tract parcel of land, 125 acres, approximately 125 acres. Well, hell, when they started surveying in the 60s and 70s, that may be 90 acres, it may be 150 acres. Well, when they got them surveyed, that called for litigation. And then they went on and they said, beginning at the northeast corner of said lot and going 1,000 feet more or less down to the north bank of the 17-mile river. And they'd bring that deed in. It's fair, I just believe I own more than this, or he's on my line, or he's on my, my side, and there you go. And you can't do it. You get it surveyed, it's not going to agree with that. Every one of them was. So those are where you got a lot of litigation. And you learned a lot, and you went out and looked at a lot of stumps in the woods, because a lot of them would be to 1,000 feet to the stump, and then 900 feet west, and that's just the way the land lines were. Now I tell you, I got taught you get taught lessons, and I've been practicing law about 3 years, and my daddy got sick, and he was out for a year. He had cancer, and he recovered and came back. But so I thought, I thought everybody would work with me. They did. This is not a bad story. It's going to start off bad, but it's really a good story. This is how older lawyers taught this young lawyer to practice law. I went to the Superior Court. In September, what they had is a calendar call. And every lawyer that had a case on the calendar would meet in Superior Court. There's probably 80, 90 cases on the calendar. And they may be, these cases may be 15 years old. And, and so what you did, every lawyer would come up there and he'd start and go through the whole calendar. And you would determine the first case, he'd call it, and you would say, you ready, or you want to continue, and the judge would go over it. And if he set it down number one to be tried, it was the number one case. And what they were trying to do, they had court in October. What he was trying to do out of that 70 cases or 80, he wanted to find 10 cases or 8 cases that would be tried where he wouldn't waste his court. And so I knew when I went to the calendar call, and Daddy was sick and in the hospital, I knew that all I had to do, I knew the judge, I knew all these lawyers then. I was still young, that all I had to do is just tell them, I said, Daddy's sick, and they all aware of that. I mean, just a little town. The judge aware of that. I remember the first time the lawyer stood up, of course, on the case. This case probably was 15 years old. I started when I was in high school. I didn't know a damn thing about the case. And of course, that lawyer said, I'm ready. I said, Judge, I don't even know, I ain't never met the client. And I don't know anything about the case. He said, well, Mr. Farrell, he said, we know we'll be trying this case for 6 weeks. You can be ready. And the next, I reckon Daddy had 10 or 15 cases on it. The next 15 cases, all those lawyers were ready. They were ready to try. And so, my gosh, you learned a lesson. What you learned is you got your big boy britches on. And that's the way I had to practice law the rest of my life. I mean, they didn't catch you. I mean, they were nice to you. When you walked out of the calendar call, they put their arm around you. Well, we'll work with you, don't you worry about it. Yep, they would. They would work with you. Well, so anyway, that was my first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of practicing law. And Daddy came back, and then we could try. And I didn't mind. I didn't mind trying a case, but I certainly enjoyed trying a case with Daddy. And I remember one day, I'm not going to go into this case, but I can tell you about the parameters of it. Daddy was out of town. He and Mama was on vacation. I'd been practicing law about a year. And I walked in the courthouse, and Herbert Moat was a clerk. Y'all remember Herbert? Yeah. And so he was the clerk, and he called and said, Curtis, come over here, I need to talk to you. He said, you've been appointed on a case. Well, it's Wednesday afternoon, it's after lunch, and I noticed all the lawyers, they were there checking titles. They didn't look at me. So I didn't pay no attention. Daddy's gonna be back in a week, and he could help me, and I hadn't tried a criminal case then. And so I wasn't too much worried about it, because I knew Daddy could help me. So he said, Curtis, it's a criminal case. I said, well, okay. I told her, I said, Daddy and Mama are on vacation, but they'll be back, and I'm not with this. I come by here and get all the papers. He said, no. He said, I need to tell you about this case. This is a murder case. And I said, a murder case? Well, I still wasn't worried about it, because even though I hadn't tried that kind of case, I was going to have Daddy's help, and Daddy tried a bunch of murder cases, and I wasn't really worried about it. He said, Curtis, you're going to try it Monday morning. true story. I mean, this is, and so Monday morning, we got to the courthouse, Superior Court, struck a jury. And we tried it. Had a verdict Monday afternoon. And then they had the death penalty, life in prison that night. Got another verdict. But anyway, it didn't come out well. But I will tell you this. As the Supreme Court of Georgia, I appealed it, Supreme Court of Georgia, and they reversed it. And what happened, it all worked out in the end. But the reason to tell you that story, that's the way it was, and that's the reason, if y'all get mad at the judicial system, they're giving a lot of rights to people, and they giving time to try the cases, well, it's because of some of this stuff going on. So, you know, that was a tough day. And I'm not going to go into all the details of that, just a tough day. But in any way, that's just how it was. And it wasn't just me. They wasn't picking on me. And Jerome would tell you they do him the same way, or Dewey Jr. the same way. They do all of us the same way. But that's the way it was. And that's why I had to get your big boy britches on, because they would have fun with you. But, and everything changed in the 70s, and that's the way it is now. In the 70s, and it took 4 or 5 years to change it, but the pleading shortened down. You can file a case by just 2 or 3 pages and state a cause of action. And I know the first thing you're thinking, well, that's awful because you can litigate more, but it's not really awful because it changed everything. You can file an answer within 2 or 3 pages. But what happened, there's no surprises anymore. They got complete discovery. The plaintiff's lawyer or defendant's lawyer, either lawyer, can ask a set of interrogatories, which are questions. If you got a lawyer and you file a suit, I can find out every witness you got, everything you've got in your case. I can find out everything about it by asking questions. And it's called interrogatories. And they have to answer them to you under oath in so many days. And if they don't, if it's under oath, so if they lie about it, that's perjury, and they'll probably kick your case out. So they're pretty accurate in their answers. And then you look at all their questions, you find out every witness they got. So you can take, I know you've heard of these before, you can take depositions. That is, you go and take the testimony of the client on the other side. And you can ask them anything in the world. You can find out everything about the case, every witness they got, and then they list all the witnesses. You can go take the deposition of all their witnesses. And so if you've heard the statement, if a lawyer asks a question that he don't know the answer, he's a fool, and that's exactly right. Because you don't ask a question now unless you know the answer. Because you should know the answer because you're taking all their depositions. I mean, in big cases, I've gone and started with 3 or 4 lawyers. We'd start Monday morning at 9 o'clock and finish our deposition Saturday afternoon. So they were long cases, and you could find out all the information about these cases. And you would get all their documents. You could see all the documents. And so those things just changed the law practice. Now that didn't happen, it happened overnight. The law came in that way, but the old lawyers, it took them a little while to change. They were into getting you. They would have fun, still wanted to have fun with you, but they couldn't have fun with you now because you could find out all their information. And it took a little while for this to change, and I reckon it took about 10 or 15, 20 years for it to become a way of practicing law. And now every case is tried, every case is filed, and, depositions are taken, and interrogatories are taken. And so everything's known about a case. And that led, of course, another thing I got in my notes, and this is true, the cost of litigation, when you started taking depositions, went up, because you had to pay the court reporters. And the court reporters there was no such thing when I started practicing law as a court reporter, except the court reporter that went up there and took down the proceedings at the court. At the ordinary court reporters around here, you never saw one because there was no need for them. Now there's court reporters everywhere, and the court reporters, they take all these depositions. So you know all this. There's no surprises. And of course the cost of litigation went up. So you better know what your case is about before you file it, or you're going to be spending a bunch of money and not making any money. And then that led to mediation. And mediation is a whole new animal, and it came about really in the last 10 years of me practicing law. When I started practicing law, it's where you got your case prepared, and very few cases were ever tried. You went and sat down before a mediator, both sides, and the reason you mediated because everybody knew about the case. There were no surprises in the case. You knew how to solve it, or if you didn't know how to solve it, the mediator could guide you in solving it. And so that's the way it ended up being, and that's the way it is now. And in fact, in federal court, which I've tried a lot of cases right at the last 15, 20 years, they would pre-trial a case. They'd bring you down there, both sides, and you'd fill out a pre-trial order, a pre-trial something you present to the court. And they would sit down and you would go over every objection you had to every question, every document you had. And I've tried a case in federal court which lasted a week, and neither me nor the other side had one objection. Everything went in. You just couldn't agree on a price, or you couldn't agree on a way to settle it, but there was no fussing with the witness. There was no fussing at the courthouse. Everything went in, and you just let the jury decide. But most cases now mediated, resolved, and settled. And personally, I think that's the best way to be. I think there's a few cases still tried, but that's sort of the whole story of way to do in business. I will tell one last story on Barbara and me.
That's not Dr. Gifford.
No, I know. We're not going to talk about it. But Barbara buzzed me. I think it was just me and her in the office. And she buzzed me on the phone, and my office was right behind hers at that time. And she said, Curtis said, I think there's a guy up front with a gun. Remember that? And so, you know, I'm not a brave soul, but I had to go up front. And so I went up there, and he had a coat on, and he had a .357 Magnum. And so, you know, I'm not that strong, but I had to, when I grabbed his arm, I wasn't letting that sucker go, you know. And finally, he did let the gun go, and I had the gun, this big old damn thing. And so, Barbara, like I say, there was nobody, me and Barbara in this. So we went, and I brought him back behind in my office, sat him down, and I knew he was mad at me, and he wanted to kill me and all that. Well, there was nothing, he wasn't mad at me, and he didn't want to hurt me. He was mad at somebody else, and they had been calling him and arresting him, and he told me he wanted to kill them and all that. So I'll be through in just a second. And I made the stupidest decision. We talked about 30 minutes. He calmed down, and he left the office, went and got in his car. In a few minutes, he came back in. He said, Curtis, can I have that gun back? Well, I said, well, I thought to myself, well, he's calmed down. He told me his problem. I think I've helped him solve it. No problem. So he left. I gave his gun. He left. But I did call the person he was mad at and told him what happened. And so he left all right. He went right straight to that person's office, walked in, cocked the gun, pulled the trigger. Of course, it was the blanks. And later on after lunch, that guy called me back. Said, Curtis, he said, anytime you call me, I promise you I'll listen. So anyway, that's.
Thank you. Anybody got a question? Anybody got a question?
No.
No, y'all don't. Thank y'all for coming. You have to come back and enjoy us. Please get refreshments if you haven't already had them, and we'll see you next month.
That'd be.